Welcome to the Mac and Fish podcast. I'm Coach McKinley Roll. I'm here with my co-host, Charles Fishbein, better known as Fish. Fish, what's going on?
What's up?
We got our other co-host here, Corey Long. Corey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
All right. Hey, I think we have a lot to go over. This was a pretty good week in college football, week 6. So we're going to jump right into it, talking about Georgia at Alabama. It was a premier matchup, top 5 teams. Fish, thoughts on the game?
Started out real well for Georgia. They got a good jump on the game. It looked like they were going to finally get over the hump of not only competing with Alabama, but beating them this week. It didn't happen. Once again, Alabama's like that boxer that throws body blows. Eventually the head sinks and the knockout comes, and that's what they did. They just physically took it to Georgia, and by the end of the game, they pulled away from them, and what was once a close game, they made a double-digit win.
Corey?
I look at it and I start by saying, you have to really start legitimately thinking of Mac Jones as a potential Heisman contender. 417 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's lighting up everybody. It's kind of funny. You never know how guys are going to turn out. When me and Charles saw Mac Jones, he's a kid out of Bowles High School. Decent quarterback. No one you'd think would be. You think you'd have he might develop into a decent college quarterback over time. But this kid plays with a lot of confidence. He launched the ball down the field. Obviously, he's got tremendous receivers, tremendous talent, but he's getting the ball there, and he plays at a high level, and he played at a high level on Saturday against a very good defense.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, this game, I thought you saw 2 really good teams play against each other. I don't think that Georgia can win a national title if Bennett, doesn't play any better, right? They have all the other pieces to compete and really win, I think, the playoffs this year. But Bennett needs to play a lot better. Going into this game, we didn't even know if Coach Saban was going to be able to coach or not, right? I think that was a big storyline. The fact that he was able to be there made a big difference. I thought the biggest play of the game was actually a pass interference call against Georgia. Totally swung the momentum back to Alabama, and after that, it was over. Jones doesn't have to be an All-American. He's got 2 of the best receivers in the country he throws to. If you look at Smith, Devonta Smith, he needs 6 more touchdowns, and he's going to be the leading receiver in Alabama's receiving touchdowns history, which does a lot. Waddell is an All-American as well. So they're really good. I think these 2 teams you're going to see in an SEC championship, and then we'll go from there. Go ahead, Fish.
Yeah, the surprising thing is not only do they have 2 good receivers, they got a third one, John Mechie. I never even heard of this kid. Usually you'd hear these guys coming up through the recruiting process. I think he's from Canada. It's crazy. You look at Claypool with the Steelers is from Canada. It seems like that country's starting to produce some good football players. But like Corey said, Mac Jones was a guy in high school that kind of is like the trash guy that's at Florida. He was in a wing tee. I don't believe he ever went to the 7-on-7 circuit or went to any of these quarterback camps. So you really did. He was a winner in high school, but being in an offense that really didn't pass the ball a whole lot, you knew he was a good athlete because he had to run the ball in that offense. He really has come out of nowhere and put himself, not only like Corey said, in the Heisman Trophy. He may play in the NFL, and this was a guy that was probably just a stopgap after 2 until they found somebody else, and he's performed very well. You go back to the bowl game against Michigan last year. Even in that game, he put up big numbers. I think Tua got hurt later in the year last year, and he was putting up big numbers when he came in. He's played at a higher level than anybody expected, and he's like almost a perfect quarterback for them because they've got the stars, and he doesn't have to do much. He kind of just has to get the ball in their hands and let them do their magic. And then on top of it, they got a highly rated running back that's finally putting up the stats that he was supposed to coming out of high school. And Najee Harris was a 5-star kid that has finally started to produce to the level that he's supposed to. But this is a very good Alabama team. Defensively, I think they improved from last week. They were able to they started to get stops. But yeah, if Georgia's going to win and play for a national title, I don't even think Bennett needs. I think they're going to have to find one of the other guys on their roster. They need a difference maker at that position with the players they have. And I don't believe Bennett's the answer. Now, can they win most of the games on their schedule and get back to Alabama? Yes, but to beat Alabama, and it's been proven with the way you see Clemson beat them the last couple of years, and teams that have beaten them on the field have had that difference maker at quarterback. If you don't, and they're able to just get their guys after you like they did on defense, I think you're in trouble. And Georgia's going to have to find that difference maker at that quarterback position. And it may come from JT Daniels or even one of the other quarterbacks on their roster.
Yeah, I don't think, it's funny. And I mean, Fish and I talked about this. It's not like Kirby Smart is going out. I mean, I think Stetson Bennett was 3rd or 4th on the depth chart to start the season. He started with DeJuan Mathis. He brought in Jamie Newman. He brought in JT Daniels. Somehow these quarterbacks just seem to keep finding their way on the field. And, you look at it, Jacob Eason was a 5-star prospect, but he just, he never really, he wasn't super twitchy, super athletic. They followed him up with Fromm, who I think was certainly a good quarterback, but you realize he had limitations. Now, I think it's oddly enough, I think Bennett is probably a little bit better downfield passer than either one of those guys are. But, he's not a big kid. He's not, and eventually Alabama just realized that if we play close to the line, we really shut down their run. If this guy beats us, more power to him. And he took the shots, he just couldn't complete them. So I think right now they have to start thinking, even if they're going to keep Bennett in the lineup as the starter, they have to figure out a way to work Daniels in, or if they want to go back to DeJuan Mathis, they have to figure out a way to find some packages. They have to figure out a way to switch things up, because I don't think Bennett necessarily had a bad game. I mean, statistically, he wasn't great, 18 of 40. I think he threw for about 270 and a couple touchdowns. I mean, some of those interceptions were late when they were behind and they were pushing a little bit. But I think you need to play too perfect of a style of football with that quarterback in there. So between now and the Florida game, are they going to try to work some other quarterbacks in there? And this comes down to, frankly, Kirby Smart's going to have to challenge the guys in that quarterback room to step up and want to be the guy. I mean, he can't force somebody to come in there and play better. If Bennett's playing the best out of the group, he's going to play. But it's got to be up to Kirby looking at those guys. That's Carson Beck, looking at all those guys and saying, hey, you want to get out there on the field, the opportunity is there for you. You got to prove it. You got to show it. And I just think that those guys just haven't been showing it.
Well, another thing, for 2 things you guys talked about. First, I think you guys are actually absolutely crazy to say that Jones is even should be even considered a Heisman candidate. He's in a perfect situation. He's got a great offensive line. He's got a very good running back. He's got 2 All-American receivers outside. I mean, that's set up for a quarterback that has success. I'm not sure how much of a prospect how great does he really have to be, right? I mean, if he has a whole setup for him right there, he just doesn't have to mess it up. And then I think you guys, especially what you said, Corey, is absolutely right. Georgia has to do something to change up the dynamic of that room. They are too talented not to compete, and that's the only position I think holding them back.
Well, I mean, the Heisman is a statistical game. I mean, that's
no doubt.
I mean, you put up the numbers. Yeah, and I mean, Mac Jones is putting up the numbers. I mean, he's throwing 400. He's having 400-yard passing games each week. I mean, if you want to say that the wide receivers need to be considered for the Heisman, I'll listen to you. But the Heisman is now, it's a quarterback's trophy now. I mean, that's just what it is. We didn't make it like that. There was a time when, Tim Brown won a Heisman, but that was a long time ago. There was a time when running backs, it's been a while since Derrick Henry won the Heisman. So It's just I'm looking at it from a statistical standpoint. He
Mm-hmm.
statistically belongs in the Heisman race, whether it's because he's got a lot of, I agree, obviously he's got a great offensive line, great this. He's surrounded by 5-stars, but he's still getting the job done. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are surrounded by talent. See Jared, Garantano at Tennessee, they can't get the job done. So
Sure.
I can't punish him for being surrounded by good players. That's the job of a college coaching staff, is to put good players on the field.
True.
And he's also at Alabama. So if you're winning, you put up those stats, you're going to be there on that Saturday late in November, December.
Yeah.
So.
No doubt. You guys are right. All right, hopping into Pitt versus Miami. Tough fought game. I got, a lot of thoughts on this game. Corey, we'll start with you. Kind of give your rundown on the game and your thoughts.
I look at it from – I thought Miami defensively, it might have been one of their best defensive games in a couple of years, to hold Pitt to 22 net yards rushing. Pittsburgh, big physical team like that, to hold them to 22 net yard, less than a yard a carry on net is impressive. And, it was kind of what we thought. It was a sluggish game at times. Neither side got – Miami ran the ball better than Pitt did, but, it wasn't great. I think 42 for $110 or somewhere thereabouts. D'Eriq King was the best player on the field. He played like it. He did what he needed to do, made some mistakes, got picked a couple times, but he made far more good plays than he did bad plays. And, it was close. I think, Pitt is one of those teams that if you let them hang around long enough, they'll definitely hang around. And I think that was a 9-point game, but the Miami shut things down in the fourth. They did what they needed to do defensively to get the win. It was a good, after a tough emotional loss last week, they got kind of hyped up and, Clemson kind of wiped them out. It's good to have a bounce back game where you come back and you just survive.
Yeah. Fish, I'm going to hop in real quick before you go. I thought Pittsburgh's defense is very good. I thought it was a good game. Pitt is well coached.
Yeah.
Pat Narduzzi does an excellent job there. But I thought I would love to see this game if Pittsburgh's starting quarterback, Kenny Pickett, actually played in the game. Remember, they had a kid. They started yelling that only had 2 career starts before this game. And that was a big difference, I felt. Pittsburgh's team is different once Pickett's in the game. And it definitely showed. But, hats off to Miami's defense. They played a hell of a game. And like I said before, I thought Pitt's defense put a lot of pressure on King and made him uncomfortable. He had a lot of costly turnovers, I thought, that kept Pitt in the game. But it was a well-fought game and well-earned victory for Miami. Fish, what do you think?
I think this is one of the games that Miami used to lose the last few years.
Yeah.
They would come off a game like Clemson where they put all their emotion in it. And, this was a noon game. It wasn't a primetime game. They came off an emotional loss. And, you want to see how teams respond, especially in a game. It's hard to motivate the players. You say, as a college coach, I think one of the hardest things to do is you have to motivate guys 11, 12 weeks, and it's not the easiest. I remember talking to one of the coaches about the FSU and Miami's and stuff, and he said, Fish, it's easy to get our players up for Clemson. It's easy to get them up for Miami. It's easy to get them up for Florida when we're at Florida State. He goes, it's the other weeks where kids think, we could just show up, give 50%, 60% and still win. And that's when you're really good Miami teams. You see it with Clemson. Clemson could come with their C game and still wax a team. Miami's proven this year their version of University of Miami football is very good. They didn't beat Clemson, but they came back and beat a very sound, very good football team. Pitt doesn't make mistakes. They're not going to give you a lot of short fields. They played a freshman quarterback. I see a 0 at where it says interceptions. They don't turn the ball over. So they're going to make you go 10, 12, 14 play drives and force you not to make the mistakes. I think Miami came out they came out of this game, I think, relatively healthy. I see they only had 5 penalties for 55 yards. So they've improved in some areas. I think this is a very good football team. And I think coming out of this game, 4-1, they look like one of the better teams in the ACC the second half of the year.
No question.
They've got, looking at their schedule, the upcoming schedule, they've got those games that, like you said, Fish, that you wouldn't be sure if they could win them in the past. I mean, they host Virginia next week, which is always Virginia's always in a tricky game for them. Then they go on the road for NC State and Va Tech. And I mean, conceivably, they could be 7-1 coming out of that stretch. But, they're a team that you just want to monitor week by week because, we're still not sure exactly if they're, if they're going to be focused enough to pull through these games, especially, the couple on the road there. But they have the talent, and it looks like they're starting to put things together to go on a stretch where they can easily finish out this season. I mean, their final 6 games on their schedule are all very winnable.
Yeah, no doubt. And defense wins championships, as we know, fellas. And at defensive end, Quincy Roche, he just, I mean, he's putting pressure on the quarterback. He's getting after. He's very active. I think this Miami team is very good, like you talked about, Fish, like you said, Corey, and they're a team to watch in the future. I think they're only going to get better, and that should be scary for future opponents in the ACC.
I'd like to see them run the ball better. They have struggled running the ball the last couple weeks. I mean, they got to get the ball back into to their running backs. They've got some very talented young backs, and I'd like to see them run the ball better. I think King has taken on a little bit too much on his own end with running the football.
Yeah, a lot of that's because their strength isn't passing the football. They have to do a lot of things with their receivers who are, it's not one of the better groups of receivers Miami has. They have 2 great tight ends, but they're easy. Teams are starting to figure out, what, we're going to make this team. If they're going to beat us, they're going to beat us throwing the football. And, they're forcing, you saw Pitt. Pitt made them go on drives. I believe a lot of the drives they had were not, short drives. Yeah. You could look, they had one 3-play drive, but one of their touchdown drives was 11 plays. Another one was 6-7 plays. So they need to get back to running the football. I do think teams are forcing them to throw it, but yeah, definitely if they want to come out of this and be 9-1 or 10-1 at the end of the year, their success is going to come from King and those running backs having success.
No doubt. Let's go to another game. Probably the biggest upset in college football weekend was FSU over North Carolina. Huge win for Mike Norvell and his program and the team. They just needed, to gain confidence and in the direction he's taking them in the program. I felt that they played very inspired football. Obviously anytime you could get blocked punts, the trajectory of you winning a game actually goes up if you look at percentages. And that showed out. It was the offensive line. Hats off to them. This is probably the best game the offensive line has played in the last 2 or 3 years at FSU. They ran for 241 yards. I just think Travis just gives you so much that you have to prepare for in a defense, whether he'd been throwing the ball or his legs. I mean, he rushed for over 100 yards. Last quarterback to do that was E.J. Manuel for FSU. The defense and the talent, the talent in this team, in this program. And they showed it. They showed it, created more blitzes and pressure than they've ever done in the Fuller era. And lastly, Mack Brown has never beaten FSU. I mean, he's going to go 0 for 30, but really he's 0 for 9. If he couldn't beat this team, FSU, he's probably never going to do it. So, Fish, let's go to you. Your thoughts on FSU Carolina?
Crazy. Every coach outside of Saban, there's always that one team that coaches struggle to beat. And I guess, Mack Brown, this is Achilles' heel is Florida State. But honestly, we talked about this. So one thing is there's losing and which FSU's done early on and often early this year, and losing and showing like you didn't care, like you were out there. This is the first game. It did. At the end of the day, Corey talked about moral victories, and we joked about that. They needed not only to win, but to show the passion that they finally cared, like they wanted to play football. You know, Marvin Wilson had his best game. Where has that been the first 5 weeks? What had to motivate him? I mean, this guy's playing for an NFL paycheck in a first round, draft pick. You would think, hey, that's enough to motivate him to go out there and then be inspired every week. Corey Durden, before he laid a guy out, and let's talk about that a little bit. People say, oh, well, he got thrown out of the game. At least he hit somebody. We know he can breathe. He didn't hit anybody the first 4 weeks to even get thrown out of a game. Where's this Kano been? Where's this, even Janarius? Their D-line got after it, and even the backups, like they performed at a high level. We talked, they brought in Steven Dix and put him in there. And, everybody always says, oh, you see these other teams playing freshmen. Yeah, they're going to make mistakes, but at least he was around the ball to make a mistake. The other guys that were in there weren't. But, I came away very impressed that they were able to do it pretty much. They dominated the game in the first half. Yes, they held on in the second half. But a lot of that, people think, man, the coaches maybe got conservative. I think the thing is offensively, these coaches have to use a lot of tricks to win with this offense because of the O-line. They don't have a lot of guys that can break the game open. And Jordan Travis is limited as a quarterback throwing the football. You look, he's 8 of 19 for 190. You would thought watching that game he was 12 of 15, but you look, he does not complete a lot of balls, and especially in the second half when they needed him to sustain drives, that defenses are going to take away his ability to run at some point. And they're going to say, you know what? If you're going to beat us throwing the football, fine, we're going to take our chances. But kudos to the coaching staff, kudos to the players. It's about time because it's been a long time. We saw it last year with Boise State for a half, and you're like, oh, what? You looked at the second half, you were thinking, oh, here we go again. And half the thing is, and McKinley, you know this, losing out of kids is the toughest thing because when things go wrong, what do players do? They revert back to everything bad they know. This team did not do that the other night. You could see it. They made key plays even in the second half when things weren't going their way. They made some key plays. They got a quick turnover from Jordan Travis through an interception. They could have easily folded there. North Carolina had the momentum. They could have scored there, tied the game, or even made it closer. But the defense stepped up in the second half. So guys stepped up all three phases of the game, offense, defense, special teams. And like you said, if you could get a special teams touchdown or some cheap touchdown early, just to get you some momentum, it makes a big difference in how you play the rest of the game. And you got to give these guys a lot of credit. Good for them. They needed it. Those players, you feel for the players. A lot of these kids were highly rated kids. They came to Florida State to win, and those are the guys that deserve what happened the other night most.
Corey?
First, their defensive efforts. Now, we're in a world where everybody's giving up yards. I mean, everybody's giving up yards. So, they give up 555 yards. They give up a lot. They gave up a lot, but they were generating negative plays, which – that eases the pain a little bit when you can get Josh Kano giving you a pick six off of reading a screen pass, and you get some sacks. And I really don't think it was I think there were some coaching changes. I don't know if there was too much scheme changes, but I think the coaches they took away a lot of the thought process and just said play downhill. And I think they were thinking a whole lot, trying to be in position, trying to fill a gap, trying to do a lot of things in the first 4 weeks. And now it finally came down to just play downhill, just attack. And, you're going to give up some plays, but you're going to generate some negative plays. And, by getting 2 block punts, by getting a pick six, you're able to generate scoring and opportunities that, that are unconventional. So I do think there were some changes made on the defensive coaching staff to get more out of the players to put them in better positions by very simply taking away some of the, some of the scheme, so to speak. Coaches often get married to a scheme instead of married to the talent. Well, very quickly, these guys might have learned that this scheme isn't fitting this talent, so they better get married to the talent. Beyond that, offensively, I look at, Jordan Travis is not a good passer. He's not going to pick you apart, passing the ball on a passing tree. But the early runs that he made, it forces the defense to be so accountable for him that those little chunk plays are there. The jump pass to the tight end, the downfield throw to Ontario Wilson, those chunk, like the passing is going to come in big plays. It's not going to come in very simply, we're gonna complete a 6-yard out and move the chains. Everything's going to be something designed to get a big play out of it. So, I look at the running game. Both Webb and Travis went over 100 yards. Webb had a really big run there. I thought the first half they were phenomenal. The second half, they took their foot off the gas. And the other thing was Carolina started pushing the ball down the field, and that was something we thought they would do from the outset. But I don't really understand their game plan. They were trying to play a game like they were Notre Dame. Like they want to try, we're going to physically punish you. Their line isn't that good, clearly. And frankly, it just didn't fit the profile of the team. Yes, they run the ball, but they needed to push the ball down the field and challenge it. And the fact is they didn't. I told both of you, Sam Howell came out a little shaky. He was patting the ball. He was hitching his throws a little bit. He wasn't there. And what happened was they didn't get off to a good start. FSU got momentum. Next thing you knew, it was 24-0. Then they get another touchdown right before the half. Second half, they pushed the ball down the field. They outscored them 21-0. And, FSU ran out of gas at times. But overall, I thought they played well. I mean, yes, Carolina dropped some passes late to close out the game, but you need breaks. This was a team that probably was going to need a few breaks to win. And they got to win over a top 5 team. Their first since, 2007. You remember who their last top 5 victory was as an unranked team? You remember who that was?
I think Boston College, wasn't it?
It was Matt Ryan's Boston College team. Drew Weatherford coming off the bench after I think they kicked out Xavier Lee. And Weatherford came back and had a big game out in Amherst, Massachusetts.
Myron played that game, I believe.
Huh?
I think Myron played that game.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm sure he did. Yeah, because he was there definitely. Yeah, it was BC, Matt Ryan's BC team. That took Matt Ryan out of the Heisman.
Yeah.
Took Matt Ryan's Heisman trophy away from him.
But this kind of hitting on some of the things you guys talked about, and Fish, I hear you talking about the defensive line being more motivated or whatever case may be. I want to get away from we just placing it on the player's motivation, right? I think that needs to be, it's a counter thing. And I agree with Corey. There was strategically and schematically, there was a change defense in their mindset and their game plan. And their approach was different than we've seen since Norvell's been there. As well as, now moving forward, what do you do with Travis, right? Now we know he's banged up. He has a banged up shoulder. We don't know the extent of the injury, but you could clearly see he was affected by it late in the game. And going to play Louisville, who was just in a slugfest against Notre Dame, I think that spells a little trouble because it takes away a lot of his running and what makes him a solid special player. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, Jordan's already rushed the ball. He had 16 carries in this last game. If he continues running that many times, he's not finishing out the year. He's 10, maybe 12 max carries, but they have to win the game. Like, he's one of their best players. So they're riding a thin line of, all right, do we run this guy too much or this or that? Sometimes I think they're going to have to pull the brakes back on him because he's going to get beat up to the point, and he's not a big kid. He's not Tim Tebow. He's not one of these guys that dishes out punishment. He's the one that takes most of punishment. I think he's beat up. And I think that's probably, parts of the reason why, we talk about why he didn't start earlier the year, and we're talking about going even back to practice. I don't think these coaches, one, not having a spring, you don't know what a lot of these guys were capable of doing and playing to their strengths. They didn't know what these guys Corey talked about it. Why wasn't Marvin Wilson playing some D end to try to get him out one-on-one with guys? I just think these guys are just learning their personnel. So some of those adjustments, they probably should have happened already, but they don't know what they have. I think they're finally starting to get it, and hopefully they continue this. But a lot of those guys, we saw it in the second half. They reverted back to some of those things, and that's what you have to, these coaches have that fine line of like, all right, we're teaching them. You don't want to put too much input in their head where they're overthinking. You've been there as a coach. How much can these guys absorb mentally of the playbook? I'm sure their playbook offensively is probably a small 2 pages of Mike Norvell's offense. I seriously doubt he's running even close to 30-40% of it because of what Travis' strengths are. But I think if they're going to run him, I think they got to run him more to the outside where he's going to have a run pass option. So if he's running, he can either slide because he can see what's coming after him or run out of bounds. Him running straight up the gut, dude, this kid won't last another week or two. You can see it every time he gets hit. He has that Thurman Thomas limp, and he ain't Thurman Thomas. That's what Thurman Thomas used to limp, come out against the Dolphins. Next, 3 plays later, bust off a 70-yard run, and he thought he was hurt. That ain't Jordan's hurt. You can see this poor kid's man, he's sucking it up, and you're like, he's doing everything he can to make it seem like, so the enemy or the team on the other side doesn't know it, but they're going to have to change the offense up so you can still use strengths of his, but not take so many direct shots because it's just not going to work.
Well, what I loved is that after the game, when asked how he felt, what did he say? I'm 100%. And I love the fact that, late in that game, we saw he had basically use of one arm, but, he made those third down runs. He did that. They needed that. They need, it's important in any situation for a team to believe in the guy at quarterback. And they don't have anybody else. Let's be honest. They have nobody else at quarterback. So so he's really, as tough as it is and as banged up as he is, he's the only guy that team believes in. There were opportunities that, in a normal world, if you felt like you had more options, I think when it was clear that his shoulder was banged up, that they would have probably put Blackman in for a couple of plays. But, you've seen that disaster happen so many times, they just couldn't risk it. And to his credit, when they asked him to go out there and get the job done late, he was able to do it. That's something I'll appreciate. He's a tough kid.
Absolutely.
And he's showing that he's willing to, he's willing to take the heat to stay in there to help, this team try to get back on track. So I really appreciate what Jordan Travis is bringing, not just in terms of his statistically, but what he brings that team in terms of just his belief in them, their belief in him.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You can't question his toughness. He definitely changes the dynamic of the offense. But it was a big win for the whole program. You saw the stands erupted. I think the fans wanted it. Fans needed it. I think Tallahassee needed it. And, it's good to see that, FSU back in people's minds and talking about, hey, the program is moving in a correct direction.
Hey, Mac, you didn't see who hugged, Coach Norvell at the end of the game?
No, who's that?
The athletic director. So that was a big win.
Oh,
because
no doubt.
He ran over there and hugged him and was right there in the celebration. There's a lot of pressure on a lot of people inside that program because they took a chance on a coach that did come from a lower level. So
no doubt.
It's just, now another team looking ahead, you get 3 games. I think you get Louisville. I think it's Louisville, NC State, and Pitt, or Louisville, Pitt, and one of those 3. And you can conceivably see a situation where 5-3, 4-4 is possible, and then you start thinking 6 wins bowl game. But this is the hard week. It's you come off of a big win. You got a noon game against Louisville on the road. Team they've had success with. They've had plenty of success against Louisville, with the exception of Lamar Jackson years. But a team that's certainly they're both in similar situations. Louisville's they're looking for a game or two to kind of put them at least in that next tier of ACC teams. So is FSU. So it's a challenge on both sides. Like I said, we can conceivably see this team going 4-4, 5-3 into the Clemson game, but they could easily be 2-5. It's very possible. So you have to look at it in both ways.
This is the type of team that honestly they're going to have to go week to week.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know where you get these 4 or 5 wins from, Corey, but
you told me they can't beat NC State or Pitt
at NC State, number one.
Well, okay, but you told me the NC State is unbeatable. Like they can't.
No, they're not. No, they're not unbeatable. But how many times has it?
If they beat Pitt and Louisville, they're 4-4. No, that's 4-4. That's what that is.
That's a big stretch. Now
they can also be 2-5. I mean, 2-5. They can be 2-6. I mean, it's possible.
Well, first, this game this Saturday is going to be a tough game, out, just from the emotional standpoint, right? Just like Fish was talking about getting up for games week by week. And then you're talking about, okay, you have a bye week. Then you go and you play a Pitt team at home who we just saw basically take it to Miami in a hard-fought game. And then you're talking about at NC State where ranked FSU teams in the past have struggled.
If you want to show progress, if you want to tell somebody your program's moving in the right direction, you win 2 out of those 3.
Oh, I agree with you. I just think it's a taller task than.
It's conceivable to say that they could win 2 out of those 3 games.
True.
I don't think they can win all 3, but I certainly think it's possible.
Possible. It's just when you're not a great team, and they're not a great team. Like there's certain teams, Clemson could come, Alabama could come. These teams, Ohio State, they don't have to play an A game. FSU. For them to beat these teams, have to play. To beat North Carolina, they had to play an A game. If they had played a B game, they lose. They played an A game. Louisville's probably a B game. All right. Some of these other teams, they may need they have to play a B game. They're not good enough to go, oh, hey, that's NC State on the schedule. They lost their quarterback. They've struggled up at NC State with bad quarterbacks playing for NC State. It's just for whatever reason, it's a place we talk about Mac Brown not beating Florida State. For whatever reason, North Carolina State has been a thorn in their side up at that stadium for whatever reason. And I don't know why, but I've seen it. I saw Ponder go up there and lose to them. They had Russell Wilson, but they don't do well up there. This team's not good enough to go and look at their schedule right now and go win, lose. Like they're week by week, man. They're like that addict, just day by day, week by week. Let's take it one day at a time. All right. They need to take it one. Like, hey, you beat North Carolina. Yeah. They don't need any more moral victories. We talked about that. Like Louisville sitting there. They're 1-3, and they're in the same position Florida State was this last weekend.
Yeah,
a good team that's lost some close games that they could have possibly won. They're sitting there, they're angry, and Florida State's coming in high on their horse. They're, Louisville has something to prove. They're going to want to beat Florida State, and look, they're a team that before the season started, most people thought Florida State, if they were going to lose a game, this would have been one of them. So. Yeah. They got to come and give another A performance. That's how you're going to know this coaching staff, how good they are week to week. Will they? Hey, listen, it's not about it's easy now. They've won their game, but Mike Norvell on Monday ain't going, hey, we just beat North Carolina. He's like, hey, we're on to the next opponent. So they got to come out and show something, and they got to jump out on Louisville and put that dog down right away. If they come out and Louisville gets a lead, I don't think Florida State will win that game. Yeah. I just don't. They've got to do exactly what they did at UNC. Jump on them, step on their throat, end the day.
Well, Fish, I remember what you talked about this FSU team. You're talking about it being kind of a team that likes to play when they have the lead, right? That's more. Sometimes a lot of the Florida schools like to have a front runner type of mentality, which isn't a bad thing. It just is. That's kind of how the kids here in the state of Florida, how they are. They're very, it's what's the scoreboard looking like, and that's how they're gonna play, play by play, series by series. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we'll see what comes next week, and we'll be looking forward to it.
I think it's the most important game of the season for Florida State. I think really, if they win that game, I think it can be a really good springboard. Yeah. And if they lose it, I think it'd be a major fallback for them. I really do. Yeah. I know we're done with our games, but we all saw Memphis and UCF. I mean, we ain't gonna talk that was like 1,800 yards of offense. That was some Arena Bowl stuff.
Terrible defense. Terrible defense. I mean,
quarterback throws for 600 yards, you should win. That's the bottom line. You should win that game.
Absolutely.
Hey, listen, when we said, hey, there's 1:06 left, and you're like, that's way too much time. Like no timeouts. They could have put the ball on the 1 yard line and honestly said, hey, go 99, and I believe UCF could have gone 99.
Hey, did y'all see the one kid wanted to fight the kicker after the game?
No, I thought the quarterback was going up to the kicker, and then the kicker wanted to fight. I'm like, what the hell is going on? All right, real talk. Josh Heupel at UCF has the magic sort of run dry.
Yeah. Hey, he's going to see what it feels like to lose multiple games at UCF. They're used to winning there,
Yeah.
They're used to winning.
I mean, they're out there saying that they're waiting for him to get fired and stuff. I'm like, this guy's with like 11-1 and 9-3, and they're talking get fired. Like,
you know what? As long as he keeps bringing the quarterbacks in that he has, and they've got the talent, they're playing in a conference that a majority of the games they're going to win. You're not going to win every game every year at a school like that. I don't care. It's hard to maintain year in and year out to go 12-0, 11-0. It just is. And I mean, it's hard enough to do it at the big time programs, but is a run over. I pump the brakes on that. They still got one of the best offenses in the country. They're going to be able to score on anybody they want, and we'll see. I mean, I still have a lot of faith in what they can do.
Our buddies at USF, they had a shot against Temple. I think they had a 2-score lead against Temple before they gave up 19 in a row and lost by 2. And they showed a lot of improvement. That's a pretty tall order for Jeff Scott over there. But I would say that was probably their best game of the season, at least offensively.
Yep.
It's a wrap.
See you next week.
All right, folks. See y'all.